here. I'll know ahead of time what the lie angle needs to be, if it's 45 degrees or 47 or whatever, and I'll do my measurements to see if this bend is to that fitted measurement. Then you see we don't have any crimps in the shaft, but on the side where I did heat the shaft, these burn marks will just simply polish out. If we have a graphite shafted club, obviously we can't heat the shaft and bend it like the steel shafts, but there's an adapter that we can use. This is much like the adapter that was made for the putters to adjust the lie angle of the shaft. So here's how that process works. I start with the club, off-the-shelf club. Then I have to completely take it apart. The first thing I'm going to do is take the grip off, try to save the grip so we can reuse it. Put it in my little vise. Need enough pressure, but not so much to crush the shaft. So with the club securely in the vise, I'm going to take this grip off so that we can reuse it. So what we need to do now is change to our shaft extractor so we can get the shaft and the club head separated. Place the club head shaft in like so. Get everything tightened up a bit. Then we apply a small amount of heat to the hosel on the club head so that it'll break down the epoxy, just enough to break down the epoxy and not damage the shaft. Some people, this is just an aside here, some people worry about leaving their clubs in their car during the summer heat, and yeah, I don't like to leave mine in my car either, just the notion of them heat soaking out there. But the only way you'll know that the heat has had an effect on your golf clubs is if the heads start falling off, because it doesn't take much heat to remove the head from the club, but it takes a whole lot more heat to deteriorate the resins and epoxies in the shaft. So if your heads fall off, you know it got too hot. If they don't fall off, you haven't had enough heat to have any effect on your clubs, basically. If the heat is applied properly, it doesn't affect the clear coat or paint finish on the club head. Sometimes they're stubborn. But the point is, I have this thing ratcheted down and there's a spring mechanism in here, so there's tension on this head. So when it reaches a point where there's enough heat, that spring tension will allow the club head then to begin to slip off. So we've got the pressure on our club head. The club head is free, and we can just pull it straight off the end of the shaft. So we've saved our shaft again for reuse. We had to take the grip off, took the head off, we'll clean it all up and put in our lie adjustment. So we clean out the head. We clean the end of the shaft, scrape off all the old epoxy and glue resin, clean out the tip of the shaft so that our new glue will fit down or up the shaft. We take our little adapter, place it in the head of the golf club. Our shaft fits like so. Now we have a lie angle that's more suitable, more appropriate for those playing from a seated position. And I can bend this much like I bent the hosel in the lie bending machine. So that's how we would make an adjustment when there's a graphite shaft where you can't bend the shaft, or if you couldn't bend the hosel of the club. Just some other things we need to be aware of, whether we're the instructor or the therapist for a golfer with disabilities, is to make sure that the equipment is not too heavy. For example, the lightweight graphite shaft, and some can use a steel shaft, but just be aware of that. We don't want them trying to swing a club that's too heavy. A club or a shaft that has plenty flex in it, one that's not too stiff. We need to be aware of the grips of the clubs. Make sure it's something that fits the golfer's hand, both in terms of size and just the texture of the grip. Some golfers prefer a grip that's much softer, and there are soft grips out there. Some prefer grips that are much firmer, and there are those type of grips. And if nothing else, that just contributes to the feel that the golfer has for the club, and that's very important. Another thing that can be done, this is a traditional putter grip. You see it's flat on one side, but in a lot of cases, and this is what's used on the adaptive putter, we use a round grip. Sometimes the situation is such that the student or the golfer can't get their hands on the club in a traditional fashion where the thumbs go down the flat side of the grip. So just by using a round grip, it's much more accommodating for their hands. Also, this split grip, like you see on this putter, so that they can have their bottom hand here and the top hand here and the bottom hand here, so that they can get both hands on the club to do what it is they need to do. It's not always going to be traditional in the sense that we think of traditional instruction or traditional clubs. There are things that can be done to adapt the clubs so that the golfer can enjoy golf as a recreational sport. We've talked some about the things that a golfer would like to improve in their game, and across this chart here we've talked distance, accuracy, trajectory, consistency, and feel in a golf club. And then down this side of the chart we have the things that a club maker can adjust to make these improvements for the golfer. And particularly for golfers with disabilities, we've shown how we can adjust the loft angle, the lie angle of the club, so that they can have some improved distance and trajectory, some accuracy and consistency. But those are just a couple of the fitting factors that, or specifications that can be modified to accommodate the golfers. Okay, so whether you're an instructor or a therapist, just to be aware that these are some of the kinds of adjustments that can be done to the golf clubs to better accommodate your student or your client. And we've only touched on a few of them, but just to be aware that there are things that can be done. And so in conjunction with the student, the golf instructor, and the therapist working together, there are resources in your community that you can use to find someone that can make these kind of adjustments for you.